This is a review to discuss the Speak for the Board section of how to be a terrible school, how not to be
that's important.
a terrible
That's an
school
important
board meeting
distinction.
by Richard E. Mayer. Mr. Tenney.
Okay, great. Well, thanks again for indulging us in these conversations about good governance. Last month, we talked about Chapter 8, which was about essentially being respectful to each other. Disrespect a fellow board member was the bad idea, the terrible habit. This month's terrible habit, something that we should not do, is speak for the board. And again, something I think that we're in good shape as a board overall. But as you may recall, this is posted for the public this time. We were able to scan the 4 pages, I think, from the little book that we've got and put them in there. There you go. Look at that. Sarah, fantastic. Thanks. Anyhow, some light reading for about 3 minutes. The scenario, I'll just remind you, I made some notes for myself. In this case, the board member was the only district representative at a music function at one of the schools. The made-up scenario here. And the principal looked around for a superintendent or assistant superintendent. Nobody was there. Saw the board member and said, "Hey, Mr. Richardson," or whatever it was, "would you say a few words?" And the person was, "Ooh, yeah, I guess so." And so stood up and said, let's see here. Sorry, it said in the book, he saw it as a good opportunity to communicate with the community. Okay. And he stood up and said, "The board is committed to helping all the children in our district reach their potential." No problem there. And then it mentioned in the book, this board member has had in mind for some time some other goals and felt it was a good time to share those, and said, "We on the school board are committed to increased funding for music, expanding the band program, and in the near future we want to build a new auditorium here at Grandview School." So that was the scenario. That's something that the person who is writing the book suggests should not have happened. And so as we talked about last time, there's kind of a plan B and an opportunity for some reflection. And you may remember from reading over this, it mentioned this board member had good intentions, no question about that. This person didn't come in thinking, "I'm going to undercut things or make things hard on other people." But there were some issues. One is that because he was there in an official function or official capacity as a board member, the audience believed that he was speaking for the board. And in fact, he said as much, right? He said, the board is committed to these things. The first part of what he said, no problem, the author of the book says, is kind of a paraphrase of what the mission statement of the district said. Board members in the past had all given majority assent to that the board is committed to helping all children reach their potential. Nothing wrong with that. But then going on and sharing, this is what I think should happen, and suggesting both by specifically saying so and also implicitly by, as a board representative, just standing and saying those things, that this is what the school board wants. That's kind of where the school board member crossed the line. And so there were 4 options, and you can see 2 of them there, and kind of a little choose your own adventure thing. What should the person have done instead? Option 1, you might recall, should have just said nothing. He should have just said, just stood up and waved. Option 2, should have first said the sentence, should have just said the first sentence, excuse me. The board is committed to helping all children reach their potential. And I think he said specifically through music programs or whatnot's a part of that. So that was the second option. Third option was say everything he said, but preface the second part by saying the board's committed to helping all kids succeed. And here's my own opinion, but I think we ought to build an auditorium here, and we should increase the music programs and funding and whatnot. Okay, that's the third option. And the fourth option is say anything that's on your mind, say all those things plus more. Obviously, I think that one is supposed to be tongue-in-cheek. So the book suggested, you may recall, that option 2 would be the best one, right? Just say the first sentence, we're committed to helping all kids reach their potential. Our music programs are a big part of that. Thanks for being here tonight, waving, sitting down. Rather than saying, ooh, this is a good opportunity to share my opinion about things. It does mention in the book, you might recall, option 3 is an improvement over what he did. Option 3 being say everything, but preface the second part by saying, now this is my own opinion, but did specifically say, even if he says that, he's acting in the capacity. He's there, obviously, at that function because he's a leader in the district. And so that's hard for people to parse out in their mind, even if somebody says it. And here's my own opinion to a group of several people who are there to be at their performance. So I mentioned a couple of things I thought were interesting. Then I have a question that maybe we can discuss a little bit. it says in the book, quote, "The board position is what a majority of the board votes for." We know that, right? That's part of our policy. That's part of the law. And when you are perceived as a representative of the board, your job is to represent the board's position. So my question is for each of us, what are your thoughts? When is it likely that many people would see a board member, or me as a superintendent, right? There's lessons for each of us in here, as representing the school district in what we say. When are we just private citizens expressing our opinion, and when are we board members, or representatives of the district, I should say, and should be cautious about what we say? Thoughts?
I think I've found on lots of different social occasions, or going to volleyball games
Sure.
or basketball games, that you might be there as an individual, but you will have people come up and ask you questions about the district. I think you walk a really fine line. You have to make sure that if you're speaking as an individual, they know you're speaking as an individual, but for the most part, I think we need to be cognizant of what decisions the board has made, and always talk or speak to the public as if we're talking about what the board as a whole has agreed upon.
Okay.
That's my opinion.
Any other thoughts about when you can just say what you think as a person, and when you need to kind of?
Yeah, I think you need to be cautious whenever you're at any type of school-related function, anything
For sure.
like that.
Okay.
If you're invited to speak as as someone who's on the school board. But I'm not sure that, well, as long as you preface it, like if I'm at Walmart and I'm just
Yeah.
talking education, or something like that, I feel like I have the right to address my opinion, maybe not criticize the board, like don't criticize the board. I can address my opinion, but not connect it to the board.
Sure.
Like,
No, I agree with
you
that. I think
understand
that's very
that,
well
like,
said.
yeah.
Yeah. In a venue where people aren't connecting you with the board naturally, right? To paraphrase what I think I heard, if you're at a school event, you're there because you're a member of the board, right? You
Right.
didn't show up to the volleyball game because you love volleyball. You showed up because you're a board member. Or maybe you showed up because you're a volleyball fan, possibly, okay. Or this music thing, he showed up because he was a board member. It's natural for people to connect you to a leader of the district, and so be cautious in those situations. But otherwise, when you ran for and were elected to the board, you didn't sign away your right to have your own personal opinions or to express your own personal opinions at all. Just need to be cautious about when and where, I guess is what I'm hearing, right? Okay, good. Other thoughts?
I would say the same. I think anywhere we're at, if people know that you're a member of the board, then they perceive you, whether it's right or not, you're perceived as representing the board. So it's important to really be cautious. And if you have an opinion, you need to clarify that that's an opinion, but not talking about policies that have been voted on in a way that is your opinion of it, I think is what we should avoid doing after it's been voted through.
Sure.
We need to support the decision of the board, basically.
And you bring up a good point. I tried to see if we have board policy that touches on these, and there is one in BBA, Board Powers and Responsibilities. The second paragraph, letter E, says to accept the will of the majority vote in all cases and to give wholehearted support to the resulting policy. That's hard if you weren't in favor of it in the first place and you voted against it and whatnot, but that's one of the things that our policy dictates we do, and we take an oath to do. So you have to, maybe don't talk about it at all if you're not willing to give wholehearted support or whatnot. It's maybe one approach. Okay, good thoughts. Any other thoughts? Linda, you thoughts?
No, I think you need to be careful when you're expressing your opinion. But you're going to be opinionated. That's why we're all on the board, is because we have different opinions. And to support an opinion that you didn't go along with doesn't mean you automatically change your mind and you're a cheerleader for that opinion.
Right.
So being cautious is I think that superintendent should have made sure there was someone there as a representative. I
Totally-
see you
totally
do
agree.
that all the time. You always have someone, like last night. There's always someone, if you can't be somewhere, there's somebody else to
yeah.
take your place and speak for the board, or not the board, but the
District.
district, yeah.
Good, great thoughts, appreciate that. Any thoughts?
Yeah, it's definitely two different scenarios. We brought up the fact that we have a lot of one-on-one. People ask you your opinions. We get more of that than anything. That's easier to say, but this is where I stand, and this is what we looked at. But in an audience, there's to not spew anything that is your own opinion. You keep it on the topic at hand. So he did a very good job of talking about the arts. That's great. If we're talking about graduation, talk about the graduation and what the accomplishment is, and just keep it at that, because that's the figure that you're representing the district as a figure for the board, but not representing any opinions. So I like the scenario. I'm glad it kind of brought attention to, yeah, we're doing this well or we're not doing this well, and it just reminds you that you're out there no matter what. You can't turn it off. It's if they know you're a part of the school board, it's not something that we can personally switch off.
Good. Any other thoughts before we move on?
Just want to kind of, when I get a question that, you might get a question about budgets or, what are you doing to make these things better? I think probing a little bit, if this is a conversation you are willing to have with this individual, is to probe and ask, what are your concerns? What can I clarify for you? Can I invite you to come to a board meeting? Can I get you in touch with Mr. Moore to talk about the budget so you can have an understanding of what's going on? Those are things that I think are critical pieces for us to be able to do. Ask a little more, give the resources that are available, because it's all wide open. It's transparent. You should be able to find all that information out there. Great.
Yeah, I think that's great. I want to underscore what several of us have said. Being a board member does not prohibit you from sharing your opinion. Absolutely not. The contrary is true. You got more information about the workings of the school district than most, people that you're going to interface with, and sharing your thoughts about that is great, but just being cautious about the venue, right, when that happens. So a couple of takeaways for me as a superintendent. Linda absolutely touched on one of the things that was in the book, and I agree with. Probably as a superintendent, I would make sure that at most functions, we have some representative of the district there. It doesn't mean that, at every JV softball game, we need to have the assistant superintendent there, although that certainly would be fine too, especially if you're a JV softball fan. Don't want to step on any toes there. But we always have some representative of the high school at our high school events, right? And most of our larger events, we have representatives of the district. Last night, for instance, we'll talk about this in just a few minutes during current events, but Linda and Andy and Jane were able to make it to the Rising Stars event. We had several representatives from the high school and other folks from the district there, which was super nice. So that's ideal. That's ideal whenever we can do that. So that's a good takeaway for me. Not putting anybody really on the spot. Hey, will you say a few words like at the last minute? Some people are super comfortable with that. Yeah, I can't wait to say a few words. And some people are like, ugh. It kind of throws people off of, what should I say here? So that's a takeaway for me. And then the third one is thinking to myself, if I've been invited to speak to the Republican Women of Prescott or the Democratic Women of Prescott or, the Kiwanis Club or whatever it is, they didn't invite me because I have a nice front yard. They invited me because I'm a representative of the school district, and so whatever I say needs to represent that and not just my own opinion about things. On the other hand, somebody catches me at Walmart, church, whatever, and says, what do you think about whatever? I can say, yeah, I'll tell you what I think. I think this. So keeping those two things separate in my mind, I think, are important for me. There are absolutely many times, that I'm clearly acting as a representative of the district, and many other times when people are viewing me as a representative of the district. So just keeping that in mind before I give them the lowdown on whatever I'm thinking about that thing. So great. Any other thoughts? That was easy.
Yeah.
We finished early.
Well, I
got a
think we're
minute to
right on
spare.
time. This is great. And Sarah, thanks for putting that up and making that public. That really did help, so that everybody follows along. It's a lot better. So we are at 5:15 now, so we'll adjourn the study session, and we'll call the order for the board meeting. It's 5:15. So I'd like to welcome everybody to the May 7th, 2024 governing board meeting. Come on in. I won't make, Mark, it's okay, buddy. It's all right. Come on in. All right. I'd like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Ava, would you lead us? Thank you. We're now on, for everybody following along, we're on item 4, approval of the agenda. I'll take a motion to consider approving the agenda.
I'll move so.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes. Item 5, approval of the minutes. Consider approving the minutes and the study session and regular study and voting session meetings of April 9th, 2024 as presented. I'll take a motion.
I'll move that we approve the minutes from the study session and regular study and voting session meetings of April 9th, 2024 as presented.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion is seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes pass. Presentations. First, we have a recognition of governing board student representatives, Ava Kleinman and Kevin Phelan. So this is your last meeting, correct?
Yes.
You don't want to come back in the summer?
I will be here.
It's all right, guys. It's all right. It's all right. We do have some plaques for you. And we're going to come, before we come forward, I'm going to read these, okay? So, to Ava Kleinman and Kevin Phelan, for your excellent service as the Prescott Unified School District Governing Board student representatives, you brought perspective to our discussions, intelligent inquiries, and insightful suggestions. We thank you and know you have a bright future ahead of you. We're so proud of you. Presented this 7th day of May 2024 by the Governing Board and staff of Prescott Unified School District. Congratulations.
It's just because you're so tall. But look what you got to contend.
Good job, guys.
Can I just mention a couple of things super quick? First of all, we've been doing this program of having student representatives on the board for several years. I don't even know how many years it goes back, some decade or more. And we get inquiries every once in a while from different districts in the valley and other places about, oh, I heard you do this. That's pretty cool. What's that look like? And I'm always able to just rave and say, we get terrific kids. Every year, our typically the superintendent's involved, often the board president and the high school principal kind of put the word out and interview kids and choose one or two great young ladies or young men to help us out. We've had some great ones over the years, but I don't remember two that have been better than Kevin and Ava in terms of the way you participated, the information you've shared, the insights that you've given us. So really thank you for everything you've done. You guys are awesome. We can't wait to hear what the next, we know what your next steps are, but how that all works out, please be in touch. Come by every once in a while and say, this is, I got to, whatever is going on in your life, that'd be great to hear. So thanks again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, moving on to item 6B, 5th and 8th grade math curriculum. Kelsey Secor.
Hi, good evening. I'm really excited to be here tonight to talk to you about middle school math curriculum. We've had a long couple months of working through and trying to find the best possible option. So we're here tonight to talk to you about that process. But before I get started, I would like to introduce some members of our math adoption committee who are here tonight to help us present. So first we have Ms. Katie Winter, who's a math teacher at Mile High. We have Jolie Tickner, who is an instructional coach at Granite Mountain, former middle school math teacher, right? Lisa Darian, who's the instructional coach at Mile High Middle School. Jessica Kissinger, who's a math interventionist at Granite Mountain. Ash Howell, who's a math teacher at Mile High Middle School. And Kim Kloos, who's a math teacher at Granite Mountain. We also have some members of our committee who are here in the audience too, so thanks for joining us. I have to tell you, this is probably the best part of my job, is getting to work with teachers talking about instruction and how we build that for all of our kids so that they can be successful and that we give our teachers all of the tools that they need. So the big question that we wanted to address first is, why are we adopting and looking at curriculum now? Well, there's a few reasons. PUSD math scores on the AASA are below state average. That is pretty uncommon for us. That's been an area that we've been trying to address for years and years, and we feel like we have a lot of things in place that are going to address that at this time. We also have seen that our AASA scores start to drop a little bit after third grade. And we also did a lot of research into what are successful districts in Arizona using, and what we found is in the top performing districts, none of them are using Engage New York. And so we decided it is time to look at math curriculum with our staff. So as you can see, this just does show our data from last spring. We don't have the data from this spring quite yet, but you can see the column on the left, our scores in ELA, all above the state average. We are performing really well when compared to our peers. And again, you see third, fourth, and fifth grade, even sixth grade are above the state average, but it just starts that decline. What I will tell you, though, is what you see in our trend is what you see across the state. This is not unique to Prescott. However, that little drop below state average, that is one of the things that we're wanting to address.
Kelsey,
So we did.
can I ask a real quick question?
Yes.
Will you remind us what passing means? Does that mean that if we look at the state average in third grade, does that mean that only 43% of kids in third grade in Arizona can do math?
It just means that they have hit the cut score that the state has said is passing and
Okay.
proficient. And so what you'll see in these next few slides is the scores across the state in percent passing are all fairly
Sure.
low.
Yeah, we can-
That's not just us. We are actually a really high-performing district in Arizona. As you know, we're an A district, and there's very few districts across the state that have received that accolade. So here, what you see is fifth grade across the district. This was our dive into what are successful districts using. So for fifth grade, you can see that the highest passing rate in the entire state is 74% for fifth grade math. And you will see up here, beyond textbooks shows up quite a bit. Again, this was part of why we decided to look at that. Also, the curriculum that we're going to recommend to you tonight is on this list as well. But again, notice Engage New York is not up here in any of these cases. So again, for sixth grade in the state, you're going to see all of the top scores decline. The top scoring district scored 60% passing for sixth grade math. Seventh grade math, again, drops.
Yeah.
You'll see beyond textbooks on all of these. And then the last one is eighth grade math. So the highest performing district in eighth grade math in the state of Arizona had a 50% passing rate. So, that's Jolie.
So I guess where my mind goes when I hear that is that either tells us something significant about every single one of the 227 districts in Arizona, or it tells us something pretty significant about the test.
The conversation that's not being asked enough of the state is, are our passing rates accurate? If every single district in the entire state is having this same concern, are we looking at what is considered passing? Because it's not just a flat percentage of they received, a 19 out of 20 on their assessment. They have cut scores for how they assess.
Okay, so what is Engage New York missing? So you can see we have a list up here it's not inquiry-based. There's minimal opportunities for student discourse and collaboration. Very little opportunity for them to have hands-on and exploration with it, and not a lot of flexibility with the strategies and approaches that students can use. As they also move up in the grades, there's less practice for students, which is, an essential piece when you're teaching the math concepts. Also, the direct instruction is basically having students just mimic what the teacher is doing, so then they're not getting that deep conceptual level of the mathematics. All right, so this was the timeline we used with the adoption starting in October of 2023, where we had looked at curriculums that not only met our standards and also were in ed reports met all the pieces there. They researched best practices for math instruction and had available curriculum options. We got those samples in, and we built our committee by asking people who taught math in the schools. We also involved parents that had a math background, that, we even had a college professor come in and work with us. We had all kinds of principals and other people, of course, our instructional coaches. And then from there, we went to selecting the criteria. We went through many steps of looking at what were the necessary pieces of a good math curriculum and began evaluating the samples that we had. On November 17th, we had our second official meeting where we evaluated that curriculum using the criteria. Okay? Nope, you're good. And then in December 8th, we finished evaluating each of the curriculum using that success criteria, narrowing it down to the selections and creating a plan for piloting the finalists. And then from January to April, we piloted 2 curriculums, which were iReady and Envision Math. They had 5 weeks with each of those curriculums to use with their classes to kind of get some data. And then in April 19th, we came back as a committee and we analyzed the experience from the teacher's perspective, from the student's perspective. We also had some other data that we're going to share with you, and then came to a consensus on our final recommendation to the board.
So Jolie just talked a little bit about the makeup of our committee. And so there were 31 people who made up our committee. So we had 17 teachers that included interventionists. Because we were looking at curriculum in the center of our grade bands, we actually included 4th grade teachers so they could give us their perspective, and high school teachers so they were part of that process as well. We had 4 administrators, 4 parents, 1 director, who's our director of intervention, and then 5 of our instructional coaches were also part of this process. So it was a great comprehensive
Can I ask
team.
a clarifying question?
Yes.
When you say 4 parents who didn't have any of these other roles as well, right?
Correct.
Okay. And
Yeah.
each of them, I think Jolie told us, had some kind of background with mathematics. It wasn't just, I'm interested, I want to give my opinion, but they had some expertise that they brought to the table.
They did. So
Okay.
from our parents, we had one who was a small business owner, one who was a college professor, one who I think was a stay-at-home mom, and the other one was a former middle school math teacher for a different district.
Okay, super cool. And among the other folks of the 31, 27 other folks, a number of parents there as well, correct?
Yeah, if we're talking about our staff, there's quite a few who have kids in our school system
Okay,
as well.
okay. So we probably had a dozen people who were actually parents out of the 31-ish.
At least, if
Maybe
not
more.
more.
Okay,
Yep.
that's important. Good, thank you.
So the committee had goals that we know that instructional materials have a lot to do with student outcomes, and so we wanted a high-quality curriculum that was standards aligned and evidence-based, and we wanted to make sure that no matter what classroom a student is in, that they receive the same instruction across grade level, but also that it's vertically aligned. So there's a systematic progression of standards between the grade levels. So to create our wish list and what we were looking for, we went to the Arizona Department of Education top 10 practices for mathematics instruction. And we used all of these dimensions. So you see the first one is access to grade level standards. So that is our standards-based education. The next one is talking about the student mathematical practices. So it's things like what really makes students successful is the ability to persevere in solving mathematics problems, being able to model math problems, construct viable arguments, and critique the arguments of others, so a lot of student discourse, and the use of mathematical tools. The next one that you see, number 3, is the teaching practices that support those student practices. So it's what the teacher does that creates that classroom where students can engage in those practices. So you'll see a student-centered classroom, make sure that students have their own mathematical identity and agency. The 10 dimensions of formative assessment is just really good instruction. It's setting objectives, success criteria, providing feedback, having student self-assessment. So things like that in the 10 dimensions. But then there's these bottom ones that come across that students need to see multiple representations of math and be able to find connections between those representations. They need to engage in productive struggle so that it isn't too easy or too hard, but they can engage in that mathematical struggle, that they are able to talk with each other about math and have that mathematical language that they own, and rigorous grade level and group tasks so that it can create that discourse in the classroom.
So these are just some of the criteria that we came up with. You can imagine when you put a bunch of teachers in a boardroom with a whole bunch of curriculum, we're all very passionate about what we do. So it was clear that we needed data. So we just started brainstorming in our groups. Our groups were heterogeneous. It was teachers, it was parents, it was coaches. And we started just listing what do we want in a curriculum. So we did that in several different groups, and then we talked all together, and we came up where there were common things, and we lumped those together, and then we rated everything, like what is most important down to we'd really like to have this, but we could do without it. So it was pretty daunting, actually, to build the rubric that we used to evaluate the curriculum, but these are the things that came up. Of course, we want it to be standards-based, concrete, and I mean, I don't need to read to you, but these are the things that we came up with as a group that we said, this is what the curriculum needs to have. And then, I think there's more on there.
The first one was priorities.
What?
The first one was priorities.
Oh, priorities.
Yeah.
Okay. And then we used all of these and we created a rubric. And then the next time we got together, we had, I think, 7 curriculums that we were looking at. And we used that rubric, and we went through every one of these with each curriculum, and we rated it 1 to 5. So that at the end, and again, we were still in heterogeneous groups. We were not all grouped together as grade levels or anything like that. So that at the end, we had a score for each one of these curriculums. And that is where it got narrowed down to Envision and iReady.
So through that whole process, once we finally decided on those 2 curriculums, these are our top 2, it really got down to, okay, now we need to get in the classroom and see what this looks like in action. So we decided to pilot both of these curriculums, and each curriculum we did for 5 weeks. I know with some snow days in there, one stretched a little longer than other, but at least 5 weeks we had these curriculums in our classrooms. We were teaching it, we were engaged in it, but something I really want you to know is we got to choose at grade level which curriculum we did first. And so we were looking at second semester, and so we said, okay, we have till state testing to get these standards to them. So then we broke our standards down, and we said we want to teach these standards with Envision, we want to teach these standards with iReady. And we got to choose at grade level which curriculum we did and what standards we did within that curriculum. During this time, we were very diligent about giving common assessments and making sure we had the data to see how students were performing during this time. So every standard we'd give a common assessment. We'd have all of that in a spreadsheet, and we tracked it for every classroom and every student. We also gave the students a feedback form, and we asked them what their opinion was and what their experience was while we were performing and piloting these curriculums. So it wasn't just from a teacher perspective. We wanted to know what the students felt and what the students saw while we were teaching these. So we collected a lot of data, and like I said, I think 6th grade did iReady first, and 8th and 7th grade did Envision first, so it didn't matter the order. But moral of the story, when we got together at the end and we looked at all of our data, across the board, we had the same results. And so these are just the overall, what % of kids were passing during each curriculum. So you can see there we have 5th, 6th, and 8th grade, and no matter what order we did these in, no matter what standards we taught during that time, we see across the board that iReady persevered and was the highest of both of them.
And these scores are after the first round of instruction. So this gave teachers a good idea of, okay, now we're going to go ahead and reteach for the kids who didn't get it or do enrichment for those who did. And really what you consider mastery on those common formative assessments is 80% or higher. So if you're looking at 80%, we did pretty good on some of those.
This is, for me, kind of exciting data. As we've done curriculum adoption processes in the past, we haven't always had the opportunity to assess a discrete set of skills based on new information only. English tends to be, there's multiple standards that stretch over the course of years, and so kids have already learned about punctuation things, so we can't always see in the month and a half that I taught this unit, how much better did they get at punctuation, or how much did they get better at voice, or whatever it is. This is cool to be able to have this data, in addition to all the other pieces, right? You had a group of 31 experts looking and saying, here's what I think is best based on these criteria that you came up with, which are solid, how it meets state standards, how it meets what the state is recommending, et cetera. This is powerful.
Yeah, and this is where our partnership with Beyond Textbooks is going to pay off. They are providing those common formative assessments for us. So,
Can I quickly ask on this?
yes.
Do we have anything to show prior, like the prior success on these essential standards to compare these percentages across grade levels?
No, so unfortunately, we could look at Galileo from previous
Okay.
years, but it would probably tell us something different because this was just a first round after core tier 1 instruction.
Okay.
Galileo is going to show us after reteach
Yeah.
has happened.
Yeah,
So we just
okay.
wanted after first round where are kids at.
Okay.
I want to ask something too. Looking at that, it looks like it's pretty easy for them. So are we taking a step back? A lot of our kids are struggling and are very low. So this was grade level curriculum that they're suddenly going from 23% on tests to 80%? That doesn't sound very rigorous.
So you can't really compare those two because they're,
No,
they're
you
entirely
can't.
different sets. So that the percent passing that you're referring to is comprehensive of the year. This is a 5-question quiz just on one standard. So it's 5 questions on each of those standards.
Okay, it still looks pretty easy for kids that are below.
Yeah,
I would love for our teachers to talk about that.
If the state test gave us 5 questions on one standard, I'm pretty sure we're kind of comparing watermelons to kumquats.
You know what I'm talking about, though, Clark. I mean, this looks really good, but we're not only throwing in math, but we're throwing in beyond textbooks, which is a first thing. This is going to be hard for our teachers they've just brought in the science, and then right before that, the social studies, and then right before that, the ELA. So it's like you're nailing our teachers with brand new curriculums.
These are 5th or 8th grade teachers that teach subject specific. So none of these folks are going to need to worry about those other curricula.
I'm just bringing it up.
We're very intentional about trying not to do that. So, but our teachers are asking for the resources they need to teach these standards. And so, would one of you want to explain kind of what this process looked like? Were these easy for kids, or what what changed and why did we get this kind of data on
Can I
these
ask one
standards?
question just to clarify
Yeah.
before you go on? So these were standards that they've already been taught once, or these were brand-new standards that they've never been taught?
Like Kelsey
Brand new
was saying, these are brand new standards. We taught
Okay.
the standard, we gave the BT assessment, the BT assessments are they're 5 questions. Possibly there would have been a reteach time in there, and then a second assessment was given with those kids that didn't pass the first time. So you're seeing final data after assessing one standard. So we might have taught the standard for a week, and then we assessed, and then we retaught, and we reassessed. It's different than a state test at the end of the year where they're being tested on what they learned in September.
Okay. Okay, I just was confused. I thought Kelsey said that these had already been taught previously in the year.
These were all, we were continuing forward in our standards
Okay,
using new curriculum.
that's all I wanted to clarify.
One clarification for me too. When you say BTS, do you mean beyond textbooks?
Beyond textbook.
That's the formative assessment
Where
that
we
we're
got
using.
the formative
Just wanted to make sure I was on the same page.
iReady doesn't have a formative assessment for every,
So they do.
Standard?
However, using the beyond textbooks assessments, they are directly aligned to our standards. And so iReady was not built for Arizona standards. They were actually built for Common Core. So we're having in some places to supplement, for the most part, it aligns really well. But what we're doing with those beyond textbooks assessments, it is just targeting one standard at a time. Most of the time on the curriculum assessments, it's a summative or it checks a unit or a chapter instead of just really tracking proficiency on one standard.
And if I understand correctly, beyond textbooks correlates with the state test very well.
It was all built
On the
directly
state
for
test.
Arizona
Okay.
standards, correct? Yep. And I would say, and you guys can tell me if I'm wrong, but the level of complexity within our standards or with what we're asking kids to do has not changed. What you were seeing is instruction was targeted to that one standard, which is that one skill, that one concept, and then we were using materials from the curriculum to teach that, and then we were assessing using BT content. So it's not that we're making things easier for kids, it's actually more complex, but we're being very intentional about our instruction and assessing what they're going or what they're expected to know.
You kind of answered my question. I think what Linda is asking is, was it that the content was easier, or, other things this could demonstrate is the instruction was more targeted, the materials provided by the curriculum were easier to understand and more focused on the standard. I think that's the worry, is did the content somehow get easier? And I guess we're asking, what was it about this curriculum that
Yeah.
created this?
So I'll jump in. This curriculum really supported those kids in getting them to the higher level of thinking. That's why they're performing so well on these Common Core standards. So it's after a week of 2 of really focusing on this one standard, and then we're giving them 5 questions, seeing if within that 2 weeks, did we cover what the state wants them to know about the standard. That is very different from the state test at the end of the year, and we ask kids to remember every standard we've taught them and to build on those and to have a really depth knowledge. These formative assessments were really just a snapshot. Did they get what I taught these 2 weeks? Did the curriculum help me get to that point? And not only that, this curriculum supported the kids to a point where they were extremely confident in their math skills. I was not hearing, you'll hear a lot of times kids just say, oh, I'm just bad at math. I was not hearing that during this time with iReady. The kids were confident in what they were doing. They were challenged. They were excited to jump in and do these harder problems. They felt like they knew what they were doing, and this curriculum supported them in that. And I think the confidence in the kids allowed them to perform on these assessments because they weren't scared. Oh, I have a quiz. They're like, okay, no big deal. We've been doing this for 2 weeks. I got this. And so the confidence level was extremely different in the kids once we got them to that quiz and had them within that curriculum and had the materials and the supports we needed. So it's not that the curriculum wasn't rigor and it wasn't requiring that higher level of thinking from our kids. It was that the curriculum was supporting that higher level thinking, and they felt confident and it got them to the point where they could have these high scores.
I love hearing that because we had a discussion a couple months ago about testing, And the more the kids test, the more confident
Yeah,
they
and so a
become.
lot of times the kids are like, oh no, I have a test, but I was like, okay, we're gonna do this just super quick quiz, and they're like, all right, I got this, and so they were a lot more confident.
And
that
teachers,
curriculum helped them get there.
teachers really can judge where their kids are. That's our whole life, is making sure what we're teaching works.
And yeah, so that BT gave us those formative, that quick snapshot. Did the curriculum get them what I needed to get them in this short amount of time?
Okay.
So as teachers who piloted this curriculum, did you feel it was easy to teach this? How did you feel
That's a perfect,
jumping into a brand new
That's a
thing?
perfect question for me. Those of you who don't know, I am a first-year teacher. And so this is my first year. I jumped right in. I've taught 3 different curriculums this year. And so the support that I had within iReady was tremendous compared to what I was trying to jump in with Engage and what I was trying to jump in with Envision. They were like, it felt like a puzzle that I was trying to put together. When do I do this? What am I giving them here? Like, what am I doing? iReady laid it out. Like, you could open that book as a brand new teacher. It involves that discussion. It says, okay, have the kids turn and talk, or have the kids come up to the board and show their example of what they're doing. And it really set that up for someone that might not have the experience in doing that. And as a first-year teacher, out of the 3 curriculums that I basically piloted, because I didn't have experience with Engage, I was brand new to all 3. And so I really saw that difference in iReady and the support that it gave me doing those lessons. And it didn't feel like I was doing more work than the kids were. Like, I could open that lesson. I looked at, like, I was a week ahead, but it really provided that support that I wasn't worried about what I was teaching. I felt confident, which allowed me to give a better, confident, more lesson, to put that way.
I just have one more question, sorry. Is there, I'm totally don't know how many standards there are. Is there enough time to do in the year to do the 2.5 weeks per standard and get all the standards done?
So part of the work that we've actually been doing this semester is looking at mapping out our standards. And I think Clark's going to talk about this in current events, but we just did our last professional development day, which was mapping all of those out. And so we have standards that are essential standards that students must master. They are essential for them to move on to the next grade level. There's anywhere from 5 to 7 per quarter, so yes, there is enough time. The rest of your standards, you're still teaching, they're supporting standards, but we're not assessing them to the same level of proficiency that we are with those essential standards.
Is that because they're not on the state exam?
They're just on there, not to the
Less.
level of those essential standards, yeah, or they're supporting that standard, so if they're taught on either one, they're gonna be able to know that.
It's a good
Yes,
question.
good question.
It's a great question.
There's a couple things on this chart specifically that I just want to look at and just have you explain. But when we look at this, 5th and 6th grade, obviously at Granite Mountain, 7th and 8th grade at Mile High, you see that 5th and 6th grade, I mean, especially the 6th grade in iReady. What I'm talking about here is more of the environmental portion of this, being at a 5th and 6th grade than 7th and 8th grade, and then also your 8th grade. Where were those 8th graders 4 years ago, right? And I know you're tracking that grade in particular, and then they're going to be testing again in another 3 years. Are we doing anything extra for them in particular, or do you feel like you can get with iReady, they can get on board, they're going to understand it better? Are you confident in that? That's kind of my question.
Great question. Do you want to address? Yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
All right, Ashley.
Chris Tetra joined this.
It's already been in here. So we are addressing it at the middle school level. We're really looking at our schedule and what that looks like for kids, how we can get them more time in spending in their math curriculum. So how do we get them from 50 minutes to a little bit more to where we can reteach and enrich during that time? So that's what Mile High in general is working on, of how do we support kids and giving them more time through that curriculum. I think also a piece of this, and when you look at standards-wise, 8th grade standards for Arizona are a mishmash of standards. They're like, oh, Arizona just was like, yep, these all look really great. They can go to 8th grade because they don't fit really anywhere else. The 5th, 6th, and 7th grade standards are very good progression. They're very like, we're going to teach integers, we're going to teach the adding and subtracting of them, then we're going to teach the equations parts. Well, then 8th grade kind of throws in a lot of geometry and kind of puts in other standards. So we see that dip a little bit there, where that's when we need to do that exact thing of reteach and enrich, and how do we dial in on that part. And that's something Mile High is working on.
So it's 8th grade in general, not necessarily that where these 8th graders were 4 years ago, or it's probably both, but.
No, I would say it's probably the 8th grade standards more in general, because that's the trend for, gosh, for years.
Okay.
That I remember that 8th grade is always low, and it's really can we have the state look at those standards?
No.
And it's not that 8th grade is low here specifically, it's 8th grade is low everywhere.
That you're seeing.
Yes, everywhere 8th grade is low.
Thank you.
Well, and there's a complicating factor in that there's a kind of a tradition for many, many years that honors math move into algebra during 8th grade. And so what we found was these unique 8th grade standards were getting missed. And so we've also had to make an adjustment in our honors pathway and how we make sure that those kiddos are getting that 8th grade content.
So that you kind of get a refresher on it, right? Because they're advanced and.
Or a new teach on it, but yet we want to keep
it.
them in algebra. I mean, many of us, our children were in algebra in 8th grade and moved on from there, and it's how do we address that gap if they're not getting that 8th grade math?
What's exciting about this data, especially this set of data, is this is after just one round of instruction, and our kids were already performing this well on a standard. With our process for reteaching and enriching, our goal is to have 100% of our students at mastery and to retain that information. So they will have this, and at the end of a quarter next year, they will have another assessment where we're tracking that proficiency as well. So our focus is not just necessarily on growth, we're really being intentional about tracking proficiency on each of those standards.
Just to clarify back to Linda's really good question earlier, which I thought was salient, we're not expecting 92%. Once we adopt this curriculum, we're not expecting our kids in 6th grade to get 92% on the state assessment. This is that'd be terrific. Be terrific if we were 25 percentage points above the next best district in the state. But this was a discrete set of skills here, just one unit that we versed. So, but we're very hopeful this will be one of the pieces to move our math scores in the right direction, right? We've talked about stipends for attracting and retaining. The fact that you're hearing a brand new math teacher at Mile High, that's not a new thing for us. We get that a lot. Now, she's super sharp. We're great. We're so glad to have Katie there. That's awesome. But we've had a new math teacher at Mile High pretty much every year for that several years. That consistency, that continuity is a piece that we're really looking at, and the board has approved stipends for that, so that's awesome. This curriculum is another huge part of that. Professional development for math teachers is a big part of that. Looking maybe at the schedule and even increasing our time for, we're just throwing everything we got at to get those scores up. This is a key part of kids learning, and it's shocking and dismaying for me to be below state averages in anything, anywhere. And we're not anywhere else. We're above to well above state averages in every other grade, in every other subject. We just got to do something about this. So I love that we're looking at something that'll get us some traction on that.
One final question from my part. Are we at the point where we're ready to replace Galileo with Beyond textbooks? That's going to happen?
Yes, so that is our plan for next year.
Okay.
So we will have formative assessments that teachers will give after instruction on essential standards throughout the quarter. And then at the end of the quarter, they will take a summative assessment. So instead of the 3 times a year Galileo, we'll have 3 times a year of those summative assessments.
Excellent.
Yep.
So if you remember my slide before, I was talking to you about what math instruction should look like and how the instruction can support the student mathematical practices. So as instructional coaches, we thought, well, this is something that we can do. We can use the Arizona Department of Education walkthrough tool, and the 8 practices that you see on the screen are what the teacher can do to create that mathematics classroom. So you'll see the established goals, the high-level task, that representation thing I was telling you about, facilitating mathematical discourse, questioning, making sure that procedural fluency comes after conceptual understanding, and supporting that productive struggle. and then students are using evidence. And so what we did was use the tool to go into the classrooms and see how well each curriculum was supporting these mathematical practices.
And if you want to look in the packet that you received, there is a copy of that walkthrough tool form for you to look at. And so what we did between our two schools, since our two schools are the ones looking at the new curriculum, is, like Lisa said, we conducted these walkthroughs along with Ms. Petro at her school as well. And we averaged the data between the two schools, which was 13 total teachers or classes, you know. Well, actually, some of our teachers teach more than, you know, one. So, but we took whatever we did before that time period. So, like I said, it's just a snapshot of that time. So you're not going to see every one of these in every lesson, but you hope to see, you know, more than what we would see without, you know, with our Engage. So we spent a minimum of 15 minutes or more in each of these classrooms, and just as we observed just what was happening with each of the curriculums, we did Envision and we also did iReady. These are the percentages that we came out with, and as, once again, we found that iReady exceeded, you know, Envision in each of these categories. And so that was another piece of data that we used when we came back to our final meeting and looked at all the various data pieces that we had. So, any questions about any of that?
I love walkthroughs.
Yeah, and we sat as a team and made sure we were all on the same page as to what we were looking for in each of these pieces of criteria, so that we were all on the same page and that we weren't looking at different factors and things. Okay.
As was stated in the beginning, student feedback was collected as well. So put yourself mentally back in 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, and they were asked these questions with a simple yes or no answer, with Envision being on the top and iReady results being on the bottom. So after the 5-week stretch of the curriculums being taught, it was taught for 5 weeks, and then the survey was given to the students. So after working through the lessons in this curriculum, did you feel ready for the assessments you took? And looking at that iReady, yes, overwhelmingly more than the Envision. And after working through the lessons in this curriculum, did you feel ready for the assessments you took? That iReady. Thank you. Oh. Curriculum interesting and motivating for you. Were the lessons and materials from this curriculum interesting and motivating for you? So again, looking at that iReady, comparing that yes to that yes, that was that number that really jumped out.
You got half of middle school kids to say that they were interested in the math curriculum? Yeah. I'm sold.
Yeah, exactly. And a confidence survey, which again, those 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, that level of confidence in math, which has been talked about here multiple times, is so important, and how comparing the two, how iReady has prepped them with that confidence level. Being very confident, a little confident, to not confident, and comparing those numbers there, with iReady being higher in that very confident and confident level.
What unit did you pick to do this with?
Like what was taught in the 5-week stretch?
Yeah.
What?
So,
it was different across
yeah,
grade
it was
level.
different across the board. So with 7th grade, I know we taught some of our geometry standards in both of them. It was really kind of chosen, like when we did it, like I said, 6th grade was flipped from 7th and 8th. So we taught kind of across the board, all different standards. So it was a little bit of each standard that they were seeing in both curriculums.
But were the student surveys given at the end of that 5-week period with that
Correct.
curriculum? So
Yes, so
Yes.
we did the, like we gave them Envision for 5 weeks, and then before I even showed them iReady, I gave them that student feedback, what you guys feel over the last 5 weeks, and then we did the same thing with iReady.
All right, so we had 7 curriculums to choose, and after going through that rubric, it was originally 4 pages. We got it down to 2. We chose iReady Classroom Mathematics. And I'll let you read through the teacher feedback here. It's worth reading because there are so many great things happening with this curriculum. But my favorite part is that the kids have room to write, and as a math teacher, I'm able to see what they're doing right and what they're doing wrong.
I also like that the math questions aren't reading problems. As a teacher, you'll see a paragraph and the kids are already disengaged by the time they're 13 years old. Like, you're telling me I have to read a paragraph to do a math problem? Not the case with iReady. It's a short sentence. They've got plenty of room to work. And then, just in case you forget as the teacher, there's a corner of the page that has the students turn and talk to each other. So after they have solved their problem and shown their work, now they are holding each other accountable as peers. What did you do to solve this problem? Let me look at your problem and see what you did differently. This is what we did the same. And I also really liked that within each lesson, there are opportunities to enrich and reteach. So I think someone was mentioning about, well, what about the kids that aren't proficient, or the kids that are proficient, are they getting challenged? That's what our new schedule is for next year, where we're moving from 50 minutes to 72 minutes. And during that time, we will be able to hit that, and also be able to hit the kids that were not able to grasp that concept the first time. And also, we'll be able to challenge the kiddos that have got it, and be able to enrich them as well. And what I loved is that's built into every lesson. It's not like an end of unit thing, it's every single lesson. So I loved the differentiation piece. Also, okay. Go ahead.
So I was also going to talk about that enrich and room teacher. I just want to add, like, that material wasn't something as us teachers, as us teachers, that's something that we would have to prep and we'd have to get ready and we'd have to plan. This is something that is there laid out for you. It gives different centers. It really has the time. I also wanted to talk about the mathematical practices laid out for teachers and students. So when you talk to our coaches and they're like, okay, we're looking for these mathematical practices in the teaching. As a first year teacher, you jump in and you say, I don't even know what those mathematical practices is. Well, how do I teach this math? And so the curriculum walks you through that. It tells you how to have that discussion. It tells you what kind of questions to ask the kids to get them engaged in deeper level thinking. It's not something that you have to know how to do as a teacher, which is something that comes with time. As a new teacher, I didn't know how to do that, but Lisa was coming into my classroom and she was watching me doing it, and I didn't even know I was doing it because I was really following what that curriculum had shown me to do.
Well, and again, with the enrich and the reteach piece, so I teach 6th grade. I have an honors cohort this year. That enrichment piece was huge for me because I'm usually after school for an hour. What am I going to do with these kids tomorrow? Because they already know how to do this. And we have a built-in win time at Granite, so it's 50 minutes every day that I need to do something with these kids. So that piece was huge for us, and it's games, and sometimes there are digital games, but it was building games on paper for each other. There was a vocabulary piece. There was so many different thinking strategies. But the biggest thing is that it was pre-made and it was ready to go. And then for my other section of kids, my gen ed kids, which I also have 2 days a week for win time, the reteach was right there. I didn't have to go find another page of practice because we need to practice this more. It's there, and even the reteach pages they're leveled down a little bit so that you can build them back up to where they're supposed to be. So huge time saver for me having to completely opposite classes.
Yeah. Just to wrap up this slide, I wanted to say within the classrooms with iReady, we were hearing the mathematical conversations. We were seeing the math happen on the paper. We're listening to the students talk with one another about these mathematical practices, and it's not just the teacher says this and the kids do this. The kids are collaborating with one another and talking with one another, and I think that's what builds that confidence, is that they're able to work with one another, check with one another, and also be able to check back in with the teacher too, because direct instruction is important as well. But I love that within every lesson, that very first problem where they have just that sentence and all that room to work is intentionally set up so that they have productive struggle. We want the kids to not know immediately what they're looking at. Otherwise, it would be too easy, and we would be doing them a disservice. So if they look at that problem first, and they have to think about it, they have to use their critical thinking, they have to write it out, that is creating that confidence in our mathematical learners, and that's why we're seeing those jumps in the scores.
When can I ask you before you walk away?
Yes.
When do you find the time as a teacher to correct all that writing, or not correct it, but read it for accuracy, and check the problem-solving skills? What does that add to your day?
That has been an uphill battle all year long, and that is why we have that schedule change. And luckily, Ms. Tetro is a former math teacher, so she was right on board to give us more time in math class. So what I would find is that 50 minutes is just enough time to teach and have some collaboration, but it's not enough time for that enrich piece or for that differentiation piece. And so as a teacher, it falls on homework, right? So it's my homework to now look at their results, like Kim was saying, an hour after work. This group of kids is low, this group of kids got it, this group of kids really got it, and they need to be challenged, and then having to come up with different instruction for that is time consuming. So it took about an hour every day. And that's just a teacher decision to do that, to look through the results and adapt for that. But luckily, we are having time built in next year. So because of the uphill battle we had this year, we're getting new and improved changes next year.
Good. Okay.
So we have a couple more steps coming. So we have placed the curriculum on observation to the public, so anyone can come look at those online copies that we have, or the digital version that we have. But along with that, the physical version, the books that the kids would actually have in their hands, because it's a good balance of both. It's not a curriculum that's all online, and it's not a curriculum that's all on paper. And that was a big part of not only what teachers wanted, but when we talked to parents and when we asked students, like, what would you want in a curriculum? A lot of them said, I don't want to be on that computer all day, because a lot of their other curriculums does have a lot of digital things going on, and that's not something the kids wanted. And so when we looked at curriculum, that was a big thing that was on our rubric, that we were making sure that whatever curriculum we had, yes, it does have that digital support that we need, but it also has that paper copy, and it has the pencil, and the kids are actually writing and they're seeing that difference. But like you said, a lot of it does come back when you're trying to look at these papers and you're looking at these physical copies. When I saw a lot of things were going on and a lot of collaboration was happening, instead of going through each individual paper, I would have a student come up to the board and show their work. And I would choose, okay, this student really laid it out. Let's show their work to the class. And so the class got to see other ways that their peers did it and how they might not have thought that. And so that might have been a light bulb for them, where not necessarily they need to go back and erase all their work, but now they're thinking in a different way, oh, I could have done that. And so just moving forward, that we have both that physical and that digital copy that we have for both of our kids, which was a huge thing on that rubric that we went through. But after our curriculum is up for the public to display, then we're going to ask you guys to vote for our final curriculum. And then in July and August, we're going to purchase that curriculum and keep our fingers crossed it gets here before the school year. But is there any questions you guys have for us?
I have one more question. So looking at this and knowing that as students leave 8th grade, they're going into a lot more subject-based math. How do you feel this is an improvement to prepare them for that next level and the ACT exam that they're all going to have to take in a few years, and possibly AP exams or future things down the road for students, or just finishing algebra and getting out of high school?
Yeah,
Okay.
So
right now, Engage, the point of it is that it's not mastered till the end of the school year. All those standards are hit on in all the different modules and things like that, and then by the end of the school year, they're set to be mastered. Where in iReady, they're mastered when that standard chunk is done, the domain is done, which is what is different from from Engage to here, is that it's not just like we're pushing all these through. We know, okay, you are ready for this algebra part of Algebra 1, and then you're going to go to geometry and things like that. So that's kind of the difference between the two of them.
Okay.
That help them for those high school classes.
And the question that follows on for that is, explain to me, like I'm 5 years old, which in math I really am, spiral review, how is that going to help them as they move on later and have to do more math in high school? Go ahead.
If you don't use it, you lose it. So
Right,
if they are
exactly.
seeing all different types of mathematical concepts, whether that be stats, geometry, probability, integers, basic fluency, they need to be able to see that all year long for them to not say, well, I never saw this during the school year.
Right.
So with that daily spiral review, they're getting all different types of standards a little bit at a time so that they get mastery over time by the time the state test is.
And that hasn't necessarily been happening with
That
Engage
hasn't
New
been
York.
happening.
Okay.
Engage didn't have any
Okay.
resources for that. I mean, you might find a word problem once in a while that was like, oh yeah, we did add fractions a long time ago, but this curriculum has built-in spiral, it has built-in fluency, which I don't know if we really talked a whole lot about, but fluency is still important.
Great. Thank you.
But it's built in.
I also just want to emphasize, we had 2 high school algebra teachers on our committee, and they both were very excited about what they saw, and they're like, when do we get a new curriculum? So they were very excited, going, we want this, we see what impact this can have. So they're really excited about the curriculum that was selected by the committee.
Just briefly, as far as the ACT and like AP testing is slightly different because that's like a further conceptual thing, but ACT testing, the math mainly consists of like, I don't want to say like basic algebra, but it's not like any more complicated than I would say past anything you learn in 9th grade. So having those core concepts really solid is actually the key to doing those fast and accurate, which is, yeah.
Good. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. All right. Thanks, everybody, for all your hard work, dedication to this. I know it was a lot, so thanks for coming out tonight, too, and representing. Thank you. All right, moving on to item 7A, summary of current events. Mr. Tenney.
Okay. First, before our teachers leave, it's Teacher Appreciation Week. We love you. Thank you so much. We appreciate you. Thank you for everything you do, for the great things you do in the classroom every day, the things you do in the community, and then for work like this. This is fantastic. So that's my first current event, is it's Teacher Appreciation Week. I've been around, on Monday I got around to 3 different schools and got to touch base with, I think, pretty much all the teachers and tell them how much how grateful we are for the work that they do. I still have 4 more schools to go. This morning we had our district leadership team instead, and I was getting ready for the board meeting, but I'm back out in schools tomorrow morning to just let people know what they do matters a lot and that we care about them. It's a great week to do that. It was super fun to see what that looked like in the different schools. At Lincoln, there were a lot of flowers on people's desks. At Mile High, the kids were like, oh yeah, maybe I should be nicer to my teacher this week. So either way, I'm sure it's all good. All right, what do we have as far as photos? We had a challenge coin recipient. I was super happy about that, as you can see. Mr. Frayer and I had a chance to go. Sarah, you were with us as well, right? Sarah was the photographer, fantastic, over to Lincoln, where we presented a challenge coin to Christine Dean, who's our art teacher at both Taylor Hicks and Lincoln. We have a community member who volunteers, actually a couple, who volunteer with her regularly. They're professional artists, and they wrote such a nice letter that they sent us at the district office saying, this lady is spectacular. You are so lucky to have her. We love the work that she's doing with kids. We love to see the way they progress, etc. So we popped by. There were some kindergartners drawing bugs. It was awesome. And we got to give her challenge coin for the great work that she does above and beyond here in our district. Next slide. Very good. Okay. The Arizona Superior Court, their Court of Appeals, has a, what do they call it? Community outreach, community contact, something like that. Anyhow, a program where they go out to a handful of high schools a year, 3 or 4 high schools in the state a year, and there are hundreds of high schools in the state. About 6 years ago, they came to Prescott High School and they asked us, could we come again and actually try one of their cases there. So there's an appeals case. They intentionally chose one that was easy for kids to get their heads around. Of course, our intro to law and advanced law classes were there, but we had 150-ish kids that were there. The person who looks like they're sleeping in front is actually an aide for one of the judges, so that's not one of our kids. Our kids were all on the edge of their seats the entire time. Judge Furia, who is based out of Flagstaff, and an appeals court judge, was overseeing the whole program, but there's a panel of 3 judges there. And then afterwards, you can see in the lower right-hand corner, I loved it. The lawyers who were trying the case, the judges who were on the panel, and Judge Furia himself went with Mrs. Lee, who is our intro to law teacher, and the kids in the classes who had hosted and kind of made this all working out. They had several, or 3 or 4 different groups, I think, that had kind of a discussion about different things about legal careers and what they saw in the case that day. Super neat thing, and it was quite an honor that we've been selected as the host for this 2 times in 6 years, when again, they do this about 3 schools a year, and there are hundreds of high schools in Arizona. So that was a pretty neat thing that happened nearly a month ago. And then this is at the North Star breakfast, where they honored several of our students with scholarships this year. This is the time of year when kids are finding out about scholarships from national organizations, from the universities that they're intending to go to, and then we have so many generous local organizations that give to our students. I know some of you board members, in addition to your service on the board, are parts of panels that help select recipients of scholarships there, and so pretty neat. Mr. Frere, I believe, was here this morning. Yes, you got to go to that. Did we have other? And Linda was there. Fantastic. Thank you. I was at. We had you were there too. Oh, fantastic. That's great. So we had a soft posting for that, I'm sure, Sarah. There you go. Great. Let the community know we'd have board members there. Thank you for that. I'm sorry that I missed that. I was at an Education Foundation executive board meeting, followed by a fun webinar on involuntary transfers of employees. So that was terrific. Mr. Binder and I got to talk about that afterwards. But anyhow, I understand it was a great event, and we had several kids honored. And thank you again for what you do in the community to support our kids and represent our district next.
We didn't get it. No one asked us to get up.
Oh, dodge that bullet. That was good. That's good. Thanks for that. And then in that same vein, last evening, our Education Foundation, they do so many great things for us, bringing fundraising and helping directly and indirectly in our schools in many ways. One of the great things that they do every year is a function they call their Rising Stars event, their Rising Stars Banquet, where 8 students at Prescott High School are nominated by teachers and administrators as someone who's really achieving on their way to great things, but has overcome some obstacles along the way. And once those students are nominated, they're presented with that, and they're asked, hey, would you choose one of the folks who touched your life along your educational journey in PUSD? It's most often a teacher who teaches seniors. Right, most all seniors. So some of these are familiar faces we've seen, but occasionally we get somebody who reaches all the way back to maybe 2nd grade and honors a teacher who touched their lives in 2nd grade. So anyhow, super neat event. We had that last night, and many of you here in the room were there. Thank you for being there for that, and thanks to the Education Foundation for everything they do. Some great kids on their way to great things. And then this slide, yeah. We had a neat honor that we found out about last week. U.S. News and World Report, they rank everything in the world, and they rank, the top 10 bananas that found in supermarkets in Southwest New Jersey and things like that. But they also rank high schools throughout the United States based on a number of factors: graduation rate, test scores, et cetera. And Prescott High School is selected as one of their best high schools in the United States of America. And so we are going to be advertising that to people who are looking locally at their different options for high school, and let them know that there's an independent organization that has looked and said, this place is doing some great things. Again, AP data, dual enrollment classes, just the whole range of things, rather than just one letter grade from the state, which also tells us some good information. They look at several data points, and so we're happy about that. Mr. Neely was here earlier, and congratulations, Prescott High School seniors sitting over there. at the dais for being a part of that. Last couple of things I've got. Chick-fil-A is one of the many local organizations that has stepped up and is doing something cool for our teachers this week. So they stopped by with 500, I think, 500 gift cards this week. We got to see the cow. I got to put my arm around the cow. It was kind of a big moment for me. Anyhow, and gave us teacher appreciation and school employee appreciation cards so they can go out and get a discount on food and or beverages at Chick-fil-A, which is super nice. They're one of our many community partners who do some nice things to honor and appreciate our teachers this week. I believe that's all for me.
Can I add a hot off the presses current event?
Would you please?
Yes. Many of us today were involved in an ESSER 3 set-aside audit. So they wanted to know how were we spending our ESSER 3 set-asides money. You know, that's the COVID relief monies that is supposed to help kind of close the gap from the COVID epidemic. And the program manager just kept making these comments about how great we were doing. And she had dug into our data, our state testing data. And she just said, it is so clear that how you use this money really impacted the education of our students. And she made a specific comment, which we kind of looked at each other like, oh, you know, this is important. She said to have 49% passing, and I think at that point she was talking about our reading score. She said, that is amazing. And intuitively, it feels like 49% passing is not good. And we kind of commented on that. And she said, no, it is an extremely hard test. It is 1 point in time. Most districts are way lower than that. And what you've done, and to become an A district post-COVID, we had a C school go to an A school. And every time we talked about the programs that we funded with the ESSER 3 money, she was like, oh, that is so great. That is so good. I mean, she just kept complimenting us, and I just, you know.
And that wasn't her job.
It wasn't her job, and it was really gratifying to know that we were using that monies in the right way, and that they're seeing a difference at the state level in what we're doing.
Congratulations.
So, thank you.
Yeah, it was pretty cool because she spends her days doing this, and she kept comparing us to other days. She didn't say, district I did day before yesterday, they really sucked. She didn't say things like that, but she said, boy, I see a lot of these, and you guys are rocking it. This is amazing. It was neat to hear over and over. The first couple of times I was like, okay. By the seventh time I was like, Marty, would you mention something tonight about what she said? So anyhow, we thought we'd share that.
And she even mentioned how hard that is for rural, smaller districts. So, yeah, it was really, really cool. And thank you so much to Jamie, who's not here, our grants director, who really pulled it all together and gave her the data that she needed to show that, yes, we were spending that money responsibly and towards the things that we were supposed to do. So.
Thanks, Marty. All right, item 7A2, governing board members. Andy?
Yeah, I have some. First off, just some things that I've done. I attended the PHS Senior Varsity Baseball Night, which was very cool. I had to leave too early, but the greatest part was Nathaniel Torres, a varsity third baseman, played the national anthem on his guitar at that game. And it was incredible just to hear him do that. So I wanted to shout out Nathaniel and one of our graduating senior parents here, Mrs. Torres, for such a good job that Nathaniel's done there. And he is going to Yavapai College to play baseball next year. So congrats to Nathaniel.
Hey, fun fact, that's where his dad played baseball too.
Yeah. Another one is I got to attend the 2024 Matt Force Poster Contest Awards at Mile High last week after the North Star Breakfast. And if you don't know what this is, so the students in 7th and 8th grades create posters for Matt Force that the winners get turned into like wraps for buses that go around the state. We had, out of 1,000 entries, is it 1,000 entries in the county? Over 1,000 entries in the county. Mile High had 17 winners, 17 honorable mention winners. Each of them got a gift card for that. And then we had 2 that were the section winners for 11 and 12-year-olds and 13 and 14-year-olds. So those 2 posters you might see on buses in the community. So that's pretty amazing, we thought, for this school to have 19 winners out of 1,000 entries. It was awesome. And the kids were excited and happy to be there, so it was really fun to go to that. Other things that happened, we talked about North Star and the Rising Stars. I was able to speak before I became a grandfather. I was able to speak with, sorry, I just have to say that.
Absolutely.
I was able to speak with the social studies chair at the high school and the science chair at the high school about how the curriculum was going. So we're about a year into the social studies curriculum. We're almost getting to about a year for the science. Some of the feedback I got was the social studies curriculum provides more resources and structure. It provides data to save for each year so that they can build on that. There's more application and synthesis. Parents have access. The textbooks are all online. It's clever. It consolidates materials. Students are engaging at a far higher level with it. And the students are learning how to use resources. So the social studies curriculum was all very positive. The teachers are happy with it. Parents are happy with it. The students are using it at a higher level than in the past, is the feedback I received. On the science side, we still aren't as far along, so they're still working through some of the issues with that, but they're still working to ensure the curriculum aligns with state standards, working on adding to the curriculum, adding new components to it to help make it work, and using beyond textbooks assessments. Those are all still being developed. So the science curriculum is still a work in progress. They all are, but this is more of a work in progress at this point because it was approved at a later date than the social studies curriculum was approved. But very positive feedback from our chairs of those departments at the high school. I haven't had a chance to talk to anybody else about those curriculum. And the last thing was I was able to help with the beer garden at the Whiskey Off-Road after the rainstorm. That's the best weekend in town, in my opinion. So thanks to the foundation for putting that on.
Linda?
Well, I'm with him apparently because testing was going on, so I didn't bother any of the schools, but I attended a couple of sessions through Matt Force at Lincoln School for Parenting with Love and Logic. Unfortunately, I was the only one that showed up for the first couple meetings, so hopefully when I talked to the organizer, she just felt the timing was off, and they're going to offer it again later. So I would highly encourage parents to attend any of these kind of things put on by the schools. I got to meet Nikki Rawson at Matt Force. She's the, what is her title? Organizer. She's like the director.
Yeah, program director, I think is her
Yeah,
title.
and I had a meeting with Clark and Nikki together so that we can, I didn't hear you say anything more, but would you say something about that other program that she brought?
Yes, so are you talking about?
TC.
The TLC
Yeah.
curriculum? Yeah, trauma
Yeah.
lens care is what that's called. Talking with our principals, it's as well, so I followed up with a meeting. Oh, the gal's name is escaping me right now. I'm so sorry. But anyhow, a nice meeting with her cohort, with Nikki's cohort, about that. We talked for about a half an hour, and it was something that was new to me. They had started to implement it in our schools just after I transitioned out of being in our schools as an administrator, but touched base with 3 different administrators, and they all said, yeah, it's not very common at all. Basically what it is if there's a student who's in a family that's had some kind of an interface with law enforcement or fire department or EMTs that is potentially traumatic to that student. The police department typically reaches out to an administrator at the school and says, hey, this kid, mom got arrested last night. We just wanted you to know. And shares what they can without breaching confidentiality and saying, watch out for this kid. If math class doesn't go as well for him today as it typically does, there's maybe a reason. So then we get therapeutic counselors and administrators and teachers kind of in the loop. Just watch out for Jimmy today and make sure things are going okay. And then if we need to pull resources in to support them, we do that. Yeah, kind of a cool thing that, again, I had not been aware of was occurring, but our principals are like, yeah, absolutely. Every once in a while, not very often at all, maybe a couple of times a year. They get a call and say, yeah, super neat. Matt Force does so many things, and I knew about like 6 different programs we've been doing with him, but that was a new one for me, so thanks again.
That started about 7 years ago in the Verde Valley. It's I'd be open to bringing Matt Force in here to talk about some of the programs that they do with the school. That'd be great. Yeah, then we could bring it to a board meeting. But that'd be a great agenda item. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Couple more things. I went to the Rising Star last night, and I was so impressed with some of these kids who were up against some real challenges. One young lady, Anya, she was homeschooled for 2 years and then came into her junior and senior year and had to make up all those credits. And she did that within 2 years. So she went through 4 years of high school in 2 years and finished with a 4.0. That's the way that all of those stories went last night, and they were marvelous. They were really encouraging to see. I went to a community resource fair out in Chino Valley. Not many parents from Prescott were there, but it was encouraging to see that that is going on. I'd like to see more of that happen in Prescott. So that's all I've had time for this month, but we have graduation coming up and some other things, I think.
Absolutely.
Cara?
I have done so much, but I will not bore you with it. No. I have not done anything of interest to any of you this month. But yes, all of you are doing excellent jobs.
Jane?
I've been out of town, but I went to that volleyball game when I got back because I like volleyball.
You didn't speak for the board there, did you, buddy?
No, I didn't.
Okay,
speak
good,
for the
good,
board,
good.
But it was a great game. We were in state last Friday night, I believe. Unfortunately, it didn't go the way we had hoped that it would go, but it was fun and encouraging to see everybody positive on both sides of the court and cheering on everybody that was there. And it was a great evening. As a board member and a volleyball enthusiastic person. And I was at Rising Stars as well. But.
All right. Well, I'll tell you, I did participate the full weekend of the Whiskey Off-Road and endured the torrential hurricane we had in downtown Prescott on the Friday evening. Even canceled the Criterium for the first time ever in 19 years. So pretty crazy time, but we'll be looking to do another fundraiser. We were really lucky in these past 7 years, funding-wise, and it's difficult when there's weather like that, and we're all aware of that. So next year will be much better, I'm sure. But look for that. I did have a meeting with a number of parents from Abaya Judd. We did discuss class sizes, and really, so it was great to have not only an audience, but overall, it was a very positive meeting and very supportive, and that's a major takeaway from it. But moving forward, we did say, we are really we're watching it, and we're watching it sooner rather than later, rather than coming to the beginning of the school year, if we don't have a huge influx at the beginning of the school year. So that's our big takeaway, It's hard to make promises in meetings like that. We don't want to promise because there's a lot of different variables in it. But, I really did appreciate how they came to the table, and we all worked through it. And many of them are here tonight, and I appreciate them really taking a huge interest in this and just, having some insight and providing insight to us. In the end, we also had talk about torrential downpour. We had a heater, a water line bust at that meeting at the end of it. Luckily, we had the local fire marshal, your husband there, and he stopped it, and Brian Moore came out with all of his clothes drenched, and luckily we're there. Otherwise, we would have had a huge flood in the Bayou Judd, and it would have been, big insurance claim, I'm sure, so. Yeah,
That wasn't any fun, but my favorite part of the evening was every one of those parents who were there jumped in. They all got wet. They all got dirty, helping us preserve things, move materials out and whatnot. I loved it. Those aren't people who just say, I want stuff. They're people who are contributing. It touched my heart. The next morning I went to clean up. One of those parents was there again, helping vacuum and move things into the dumpster. And I was like, man, what a great community.
Really.
Thanks, you guys.
Agreed.
Yeah. It's the fastest way to clean out a closet, too. And then, I really have been enjoying just all the accolades, especially the high school. It's that time of year where people are getting scholarships. Also, the spring sports. We got track and field going on. I'm sure you guys will maybe touching on that. But a lot of great athletes, a lot of people signing right now into college on sports. Again, Nathaniel going to Yavapai College, that was really great, and a really a fun year to see where these kids' hard work is really paying off and moving forward. And that's all I have. All right, we will move on to action items, the consent. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Guys, I gave you your plaque, and then I just...
That's it? You're gone.
Sorry. Ava, all yours.
So at the high school, they're wrapping up AP testing this week. We had prom this past weekend. Yavapai finishes their semester on Friday. Baccalaureate is Sunday, May 17th. The senior awards and scholarship presentations are May 21st. The senior tour at all the schools is May 22nd. Volleyball was the region champions. And then we have graduation May 24th.
Yes, you do. All right, great. Kevin?
Yeah, so alongside deep in the AP testing, we also have finals for seniors. They start Friday and go through, and then for regular students, they start the next week. And then also, this is a long list here, so I have to pull out my phone.
Let's do it.
The Prescott Center for the Arts had their art competition,
thank you.
and in the 3D category, Taft Mangum took first, Roy Wells took second, and then in the 2D category, Miranda Clark took first, and Alexandra Hunt took second, and Sedona Crimmins took third. So a lot of wins there. And then also we have the track division. That was last weekend, and then now the kids that qualified for state. I don't know when exactly that date is, but
This Saturday.
oh, that was
Friday
this
and
Saturday. Yeah.
Friday and Saturday.
And then, so that just happened. And then alongside that, all the fun senior stuff. We also have the less fun senior stuff of like finishing up testing. Classes are due, all credits are due like May 17th along with grades. So all that.
All right.
And I think that's all I have.
Yeah.
Not as exciting, but.
Has senioritis really kicked in?
Sure.
I'm sure.
Information of the senior.
I'm not keeping track.
How many hours?
I don't have that
All
count.
right, thank you
Yes,
both.
not
That's great.
yet.
We will miss you, but we'll see you at graduation. All right.
And board members, all of those senior celebration things, I think you've got the dates. If you don't, reach out again. We'll make sure you get it. We'd love it if you're able to come. Again, no pressure. You got real lives as well as, board things, but anything you can be at is awesome.
Can I ask a follow-up on the senior awards? Is that like it has been in the past in the hallways where the awardees will
Yeah.
go pick up their, okay.
Yep, in the library in the hallways of PHS, and
Okay.
5:30, I think, is the start time on that. Yeah, same format as we've shifted to since COVID, basically.
Okay.
Great. All right, now we'll move on to item 8, action items, consent agenda. Does anybody have anything to highlight on the consent agenda?
Yes, I would like to pull the sole source curriculum for TCI. I need more information on that.
Okay, so we pull item, what number is this?
Five.
Source 5, right?
Is it 5?
Yeah, 5. Item 5, we're pulling item 5. Okay, and then I'd like to highlight number 2 really quick. We had just 5 donations, but very generous donations. A donation from the Frontier Rotary Club in the check in the amount of $14,000 for summer school at the elementary level. A donation from 1AZ, a check in the amount of $4,500 for the PHS German Club. A donation from Tom Riley, cash in the amount of $200 for school lunches. A donation from Bonnie and Thomas Devereaux, a check in the amount of $2,000 for the PHS Challenge Club. A donation from Ariel Gunderson, a check in the amount of $1,500 for the PHS Boys and Girls Swim Team. All right.
Very cool, very cool.
Do we want to discuss number 5? Okay. Well, that's Brian. That's your item.
You can do things either way. What often happens is that you might
Want to vote for it?
entertain a motion on the consent agenda exclusive of number 5.
Yep.
And then once that's done, move to the discussion of number 5 and then call for a vote on that.
Okay, yeah, let's do that. So I'll consider approving the consent agenda for items 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 6, so minus 5. Do I have a motion for that?
I'll make
So
that
moved.
motion.
Okay, I have a motion, second.
Second.
Motion seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. So consent agenda passes minus item 5. So item 5, consider approving vendors as a sole source procurement for 2024-25 school year. Brian Moore.
All right. As the governing board typically does in July, is they vote to approve the recommended sole source list. Sole source can be of 2 natures. One is if there is a unique product that is just solely, it's proprietary. So there aren't any other options available for the district, and so you can't get quotes. It's just that. And so procurement thresholds can be bypassed. And if you remember, we need to get quotes for purchases between 10 and 100,000, go out to an RFP, which is a request for proposal, or an IFB, which is an invitation for bid for purchases over $100,000. So the 2 types of sole sources that the governing board can entertain is, once again, one's a proprietary, and the other one's called a continuation sole source. A continuation sole source is something that had already been decided, something that had already been used by the district, and it would be detrimental to the district to discontinue it due to procurement thresholds or go through the procurement process again. This case, it just happens to be that this is a continuation sole source. It's a curriculum continuation sole source. The vote isn't specifically on the specific curriculum. There was a vote last year on the curriculum. This is a vote so that we can continue to use the curriculum and pay what we owe them for the upcoming year.
Sole source.
So
this is the second payment is what we're talking about, right?
Say that one more time.
So there's already been a first payment, now there's a second payment
there
on
was
the
a
sole
first
source?
payment. The first payment, we use quotes to vet out and satisfy the procurement thresholds. And after using a curriculum for a year, I called our auditors, and it would, every time you want to continue a curriculum, it would be detrimental to go through the whole curriculum process all the times. I mean, we had 32 folks on the committee over 5 meetings. You add up all those hours, you know. So in this case, they said you use a curriculum for the year, as long as the governing board and the district went through the curriculum process, that it would satisfy a continuation sole source parameters that the governing board can vote. We have about 5 to 6 different sole sources in July. We have a payment that we have to make in June for the curriculum, so it's coming a little early.
So this is for online textbooks? I thought we got solid textbooks for that.
No, so this is the curriculum that was approved by the governing board it's over 6 years. And we have a payment schedule that we have for that. This is the same social studies curriculum.
So
this
adopted
is
it for 6 years?
What's
I don't
that?
remember that part in the.
Yeah.
And
First time.
that's not this voting item, so I don't want to comment on it. And so in this case, and we've had curriculums when we had money like in the 2000s. We're really happy. We go through the course of 6 years, and then we decide we really like our curriculum. You don't have to go through that whole process again because a continuation sole source can make the curriculum not have to abide by the procurement thresholds. So in this case, we had the first year payments, we have the remaining balance that's due, and so this is coming forward to the governing board as a sole source in order to pay them.
So do we pay that $285,000 every year?
No.
For 6 years?
No.
What?
No, it was, Kelsey, do you remember what the totality of the cost was?
I don't have that.
Yeah, it was like 340 or something. Now, we've paid, I think, 83,000 of that, and we are paying the balance with this vote. So after we pay what we pay in the next month, we will have that curriculum for the 5 years, and we won't have anything more we do. That's owed.
And that all comes out of M&O, or?
That's a capital item. M&O cannot pay for capital. It comes out of our district additional assistance, which is our DAA.
DAA?
District additional assistance.
Okay.
That's our capital money that, based on student population, we tax for and our taxpayers pay.
And do we have to go through that same thing with the ELA curriculum and the new math curriculum?
No.
And the science?
In July, there is also another list of companies, or actually they're groups. They're called consortiums. A company can be on a state contract or a consortium. Those two things, actually, those companies get vetted for quality of product and price of product beforehand. They actually do the procurement vetting for us. So if a company is on one of those consortiums, that the thresholds don't pertain either. And so it just happens that, for example, this math curriculum is on a consortium. And so whatever consortium that is, when you vote on our consortiums in July, it's one of them. You would essentially be voting that we can procure that curriculum through the vendor without the procurement thresholds. This company was not on, TCI was not on a consortium, was not on a state contract. So for this year, we use quotes to procure this year, and the sole source will allow us to procure the last 5 years.
I'd like to get some statistics then on, now we just got them from Andy for the high school, but
just feedback is what I.
feedback. How are these others working? We don't have any.
It's difficult because you are not voting on TCI. This is not you are not approving the vendor. You are approving us being able to cut a check for more than $100,000. That's what this voting item is. It could be company ABC.
This is specifically
This
for
is
the
specifically,
procurement.
this is the procurement, the sole source, and not the company that you're approving.
But Linda, if you'd like some feedback on how the social studies curriculum is being implemented at various levels, we can put that on an upcoming agenda. Would you like to?
That would be nice,
Okay.
yeah. Please.
Will you help me remember that, Kelsey? And summer might be difficult for that because teachers kind of scatter. It'd probably be in the fall, if that works for you.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, great.
All right. Okay.
Is there
Any other questions?
Yeah, any other questions that you may have?
Andy? Okay.
It's sometimes it's hard to discern between we're voting on the item versus we're voting on the process.
Correct.
This is really a ministerial vote versus a product vote.
Okay. So I'll take a motion to consider approving vendors as sole source procurement for 2024-25 school year as presented.
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I second it.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed?
I'll
Okay.
abstain on that one.
Thank you very much.
I need to meet with you on that.
All right. Moving on to item 8B, do we have any public comments? Okay. We're going to move on to item 8C.
I think we have to officially close the hearing. Am I remembering correctly?
Do we have to open and close it?
Yeah, I think we have to.
I don't think you can.
If there's no public comments, we don't have to. Okay, terrific, good
Thanks.
clarification, thank you.
We're going to move on to item 8C1. Consider approving the revisions of the 23-24 budget limits for the M&O and capital budgets. Mr. Moore.
This is the last budgetary document that you'll have come in front of you for this fiscal year. We're not done with this fiscal year because we still have our annual financial reports and all the closing documents that'll come to the board in October. But this wraps up our budget in July and August, or no, July and June. If you remember, we do our proposed and adopted budget. At that time, we are estimating the best we can on the enrollments, and that sets the tax rate. Given that we're on current year funding, we have to adjust our budgets in real time, which we did in December. And the 100th day, which was, I think, January 22nd, that ends our funding because we're funded from the first day to the 100th day. So this really is the wrap up. Here's your budget capacity that you are owed because the 100th day is over. And so what this document really does is say, you budgeted for this number of kids, and now you need to adjust either up or down based on reality. And so really, when it comes to the actual budget, when it comes to last year versus this year, it's good. We're actually up kids, which is not, let's just say, the same in our neighboring districts. We're actually up about, well, it's exactly 17.87 ADM when it comes to the number of kids that we have. And so we targeted pretty closely, and luckily we didn't project. But other than that, this budget's open for questions that you might have, but really that's what this does. It closes the year, we know exactly what our budget pot is, and we didn't overspend.
Do you have any questions for Brian?
Essentially, the state every year says, as far as budget, are you good guessers as far as your enrollment? And turns out so far we've been good guessers, knock on wood.
We were, yeah, I think we were within, I don't know, like 4%. So.
Did we add to our carryover or whatever that's called, or subtract?
We won't know our exact carry forward until that annual financial reports, because we still are receiving and paying bills through August 31st. Actually, anything that we receive before June 30th, we still have to make sure we pay it in this fiscal year. I anticipate our carry forward will go down, which is, we're shooting for that because we want to have it around 8%. But we won't know.
Okay.
All right, I'll consider approving the revisions to the 23-24 budget limits for the M&O and capital budgets. Do I have a motion?
I make the motion that we approve the revisions to the 2023-2024 budget limits.
We have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes.
Much appreciated.
8C2, consider approving an IGA between PUSD number 1 and Kirkland School District number 23 for vehicle maintenance and repair. Mr. Moore.
We have similar IGAs already. We have one in full swing with Skull Valley. And so Kirkland just really wants to jump on because we have a diesel mechanic and a really, really, really good one. And so they have to contract out all of their work, which is way more expensive, and they operate on the same education dollars that we have, which is not plentiful. So we have capacity. We do not lose money on this. We do not make money on this. We just want to provide the service to our neighboring districts. Those districts send all of their high school kids to us anyway, so they're our kids too. So our mechanics say that they can do this, and if they become crunched for time, we will adjust this. But for right now, we would love to serve our neighboring districts in this capacity.
No, I love seeing how you all work with the smaller districts, and
Absolutely.
I was at the, it's incidentally at the Alpine College graduation on Sunday, and there was a kid from Yarnell, 15 years old, and took advantage of the early college program. He got his associates at 15. But he went to PUSD, for those few years first, and pretty amazing.
It's good stuff.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
I'll make a move.
Great, thank you.
Let's making moves. Let's making the moves.
It's been a long day.
It has, that's right. We have a make a move. We have a motion from Linda. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right. Consider approving item 8C3, an emergency disaster aid agreement between Friendly Pines Camp and PUSD. And this one's Mr. Tenney.
Yeah. So Friendly Pines Camp is up Senator Highway in the Groom Creek area. They reached out to us and said, hey, if there is a disaster and we need to move everybody out, we need someplace to move them to. Would you be willing to accommodate us if it's possible? And we're telling them that we would like to if we can. We have regularly over the years worked with the Red Cross to be an emergency shelter area for when there's been forest fires particularly. Yavapai College does that. We've done that as well. When we had the massive fires on Granite Mountain prior to the hot shots perishing, yeah, we had firefighters all over our field at the high school. There's folks sheltering, citizens sheltering at Yavapai College, et cetera. Anyhow, that's a way that we can use our taxpayer-paid facilities to help people out. Particularly in the summer is when that's needed. That's great that our disasters don't tend to come during the school year. They tend to come when kids are out, so there's little or no impact on our kids, our education piece, but we'd like to set up something formal with them to let them know, yeah, we got a place for you if you need it.
I'd like to move that we approve the emergency disaster aid agreement.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Items 8C4, consider adopting the proposed changes in policy GBEF, staff use of digital communications and electronic devices. Mr. Binder.
Yeah, so this is the second read of a policy I brought to you last month. If you remember, the key focus of this policy is really on student safety around employee technology use. We brought, the changes that are in this policy from our original policy, some were very minor, but the bigger changes that were made really were to address the issue. We wanted to keep the safety factor in there, but also kind of be kind of address the reality that sometimes we have staff members who do have connections with family members outside of the school environment, and so making sure there's a component in there that allows for that and not requiring a staff member to use, for example, district email to talk to their friend about non-school related items, but still maintaining that safety for any communication between staff and students. And so that is the component listed under letter C there, about allowing district employees to continue to communicate in that way. And then the other element that we struck through on the second page really related again to kind of the realities and making sure that we're being adaptive to the needs of what the staff are using and making sure that those technologies are current. What we did was talked about making sure that, and this was one of the requests from last time, was making sure our employee handbook is up to date with the most current approaches and making sure any technologies are approved at the site level, and that way, again, being adaptive to all the changes that are happening on the technology front. So any questions on any of those changes?
Any questions? There's one item, and this is kind of a byproduct of this, but I'd like to bring it up as a future agenda item, just for discussion about. We have just how we don't have cell phones in the classroom, and I'd just like to get a report, maybe not this summer, but how that's gone. I routinely get emails about, hey, the school district in Florida has no cell phones, and I say, we don't either. So it's a great thing, and I think we're doing a great thing. I've heard a lot of positives, but I have a student that
wants to present, like, this is a negative to him. But, you know what I mean? I just think we want to kind of share that, and I think we should make that public a little bit more, and I think it's a good practice.
It's
but we
being
wanna hear it.
enforced, yeah.
Yeah. So, it doesn't have to be in the fall, it doesn't have to be, but at some point above have that as an item.
Okay. Our administrators are here throughout the summer, so that's one that we could schedule over the summer if
That's a
that
good
works for
idea
you.
then. Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. Then I'd consider adopting the proposed changes in policy GBEF, staff use of digital communications and electronic devices. I'll take a motion.
So moved.
Motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, thank you. All right. Item 8D, we're moving on to information discussion items. Item 8D1, Brian Moore, Chief Financial Officer, has presented or prepared the school board's summary budget report for your review.
You stole my word. As presented.
As
So
presented.
You said presented for me.
I'm just reading what Sarah wrote.
I know.
Yeah, that's good. All right, thank you. Anybody has any comments? All right, thank you. Item 8D2, review the proposed changes in the governing board policies BEDB, agenda, and BEDBE, agenda exhibit. I know. I'm stumbling tonight. Andy?
Yeah. So again, if you recall, last month we looked at the board agenda with the intention of really trying to make it reflect current practices. We looked at it over the past month. Really, I feel pretty good about where we landed in terms of something that both reflects current practices, reflects really, I'll say, legal recommendations and best practices around what's allowed at different times. Also addresses some of the questions, Kara, you brought up last time about where we place some of these things, making sure community comments are listed in here. So we did move some things around. I'm happy to kind of go through them to kind of explain why they're in a certain order.
Yes,
and making sure that we understand kind of the overall purpose of it. So we did include at the top there, the line there, the meeting agenda shall include each of the elements listed below. The order of these items shall be determined by the board and can be modified as needed. So obviously the idea being this is what we have in policy, and I'll talk about the exhibit in just a minute here. But the idea is meaning that it certainly can be modified if that's what the board chooses. Like some of the changes, like the Pledge of Allegiance coming before the adoption of the agenda, that was something that we recommended prior to that. We added, really just moved it to a new spot, the presentations and reports being before the information items, again, to reflect really the practice that we currently do. One of the changes that we changed slightly was in this information only items. We've always had the summary of current events, but really the community comments, which again was something that you wanted to make sure was included, and which we've had included, but we had more at the end of the agenda. Again, looking over legal recommendations and best practices, it really makes a lot more sense to have it in this information only, with the idea, just as it explains there, this was already in policy, but items are to be heard only. The board will not propose, discuss, or take legal action during the meeting unless the specific matter is properly noticed for legal action. So community comments really belongs there as opposed to the end.
Yeah, and I asked for that one just
Yeah.
for clarification and just when we were on the review. And one, but with the clarification that, one, I felt like it was so deep in the agenda that by the time we're at the end of the agenda, it's, we're moving, it doesn't naturally fit. But when we're starting to talk about information items, it seems more proper in there. But and then what we also understood in the board president's roundtable that we had with the county superintendent, he said that those items, unless you if you already have the items listed, you would know what's coming. So
But in the information items, you can present them, but then the goodness of this is, well then, if it's worthy of a discussion, then we put it on the next agenda. At least we're discussing it, because this just becomes, at the end of the agenda, we bring up a topic, and then we kind of move on. This just felt like there was more meat behind it, and it's in line with what Andy said. So anyway, I thought that it made sense, but I'd be interested in everybody
Those are
else's.
still just comments that we've heard, right?
Correct.
That's us presenting, not the community.
Right. You bet. Correct. Yeah, exactly. But I like the fact that we could then agendize it the next time, and we're more fresh in the agenda, to talk about it.
Right.
That would be great.
Okay.
So then, moving on, so again, reports was just simply moved up to letter E now. The public comments, again, we struck through it, but really just moved it into the action items, just like, again, current practices. We have that come before the study and voting session. And then letter H, similar to what Stan was just saying, having information and discussion items at the end where, again, there can be discussion around these things, again, like we've currently had. School board summary report, first readings, things like that. And then I can't remember who was asking about this, but including it in the, as a separate line item here, request for future agenda items. Again, this idea of having an opportunity, if you'd like something to be included on a future agenda item, that this is the spot to propose that, and not to discuss it, not to get into a vote or something, but certainly to request that, and then going forward.
Good.
Yeah, and I like that just because, I mean, we brought up 3 items tonight, and we can review it, make sure everybody's clear on it, and then we can, maybe it's not for the next agenda, but let's see when it might be.
Yeah.
So to clarify, that wouldn't be the only place in the agenda where, like tonight, we had a couple of different requests for, can we talk about that in the future? Super. But also just a stopping point at the end, clarify, what did we talk about that we want to talk about in the future?
Now it has its own place.
Yeah.
Right.
That's good.
So those are the changes to the policy itself on the agenda, obviously giving a little more detail. And then BEDBE is the exhibit that just really takes that policy and makes it a little bit more easier to see the agenda in order. We don't have things struck through and all that because the current exhibit is actually just a random example of what any meeting might look like. I think it was a state level meeting on the environment or something. So it didn't apply to school boards at all, but that was our current exhibit. So this one we think is much more reflective of what we're looking for.
And Cara, I think this addresses your request to, boy, there's a lot of verbiage here. Can we just get something that shows an example of how the meeting should flow?
Any questions on those?
Yeah, questions for Andy? Okay. So next meeting, we'll have the second reading. obviously,
Correct.
so-
Yep, this is just the first.
That's what I was going to ask. This is the first reading, so we have a month to review this and propose ideas back to you if we have feedback.
Great.
Okay.
All right, thanks, Andy.
Yep.
All right, item 8D3, Governing Board to review and discuss the 2024 political agenda for the Arizona School Boards Association. Clark.
Okay, yeah, let me find this. So every year, we're a member district of the Arizona School Boards Association, and every year they, on their board level, come up with a list of recommendations for things that they would like to advocate for on the state level in the legislature. As you know, one of the issues, a key issue that we've got is there's many people feel overregulation of school districts and lack of funding for school districts. So as you look through what they've got here, there's essentially, how many headings? 5 headings. The 5 headings and then multiple bullet points underneath. But they're asking for a consensus from our board as to whether our district would be supportive of them advocating for these on the district level. At the September ASBA meeting, we're asked as well to select someone who, a representative from our board, who is willing and able to attend that September meeting. And one of the sessions that they have will be a delegates convention, basically. So there'll be whatever, 180, 200 different people in the room, and there's not a lot of time for discussion there, but we're to go and say our board was generally in favor of all of these items or these specific items, or we were not generally in favor of that. So kind of get a consensus piece. Again, this is not a voting item, but sort of a feel, a temperature of the board, and then a selection of somebody who can go to that September meeting. 2 or 3 of you went this last year, and then there's one of the sessions where we chime in. Yeah, I got to do this on the city council level. They do something very, very similar. There's a lobbying group for the Council of Cities and Town Governments in Arizona. They did a similar thing. Some things that we think are going to be common interest for all cities. Take a look at it. What's your city council think? Choose a delegate. So a couple of years ago, I was the delegate, and there were a bunch of people in the room, and I sat next. It was all in alphabetical order. I sat next to 2 seats away from Kate Gallegos, the mayor of Phoenix, et cetera, et cetera. So anyhow, that's what this is. As you look over this list, do you have questions about anything, concerns? You think, oh yeah, adequately and equitably funding district schools? I hate that idea. Or are you like, that actually makes sense to me? Some of these are kind of traditional conservative values, preserve and strengthen local control. The party I've been affiliated with for 30 years, that's a key tenet of that party, preserving local control over governmental pieces. And so ASBA is leaning heavily into that, as they do each year. Improve outcomes for all students. Everybody says, I don't think that's a good idea. Now's the time to speak up if you think, no, that's a pretty good idea.
We have to do this tonight, or this?
Yeah, we're looking for general consensus tonight, I believe.
Are
Is
we,
there a time
Brian, are we
frame
a
on this?
rural school district? How are we defined? We're kind of in the middle.
Believe it or not,
Do they do,
believe it or not, officially we're urban.
officially we're urban?
There's multiple definitions for
Yes, there
rural,
are.
depending on what you're measuring. As far as teacherages are concerned, we're
Yes.
considered a rural district. As far as the way that we are compared against other districts by the Auditor General, we're considered urban.
Yep.
Yeah, so some districts, it's real easy to tell. If you're in Peoria, urban. If you're in Skull Valley, you're rural. Here, we meet the criteria. There's different criteria used
It makes
for
no
different
sense to
measurements in
me.
different ways. Yeah.
But when it comes to, we are considered in the generalized as rural, even from a legislative level. At one point, they gave rural school assistance. We received that.
Okay.
But if you were to look us up, ADE says we're urban.
So the timeline of this is I don't know if I don't think I'm prepared. I mean, I read through them, but I don't think I read this.
Is there a
Since
time
we have
frame
to-
on this, or do they need to know back?
Yes, I think it's June 5th.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think they need to know back before our next meeting, yeah. And we just got this from them a week ago, 10 days ago?
I think they do
on
that to us
Thursday.
every year.
Yeah, absolutely. That's
You give it
the,
to us and we have to vote
it's the way,
immediately.
well, again, we're not voting, it's just general consensus. If there's a good temperature from the board that we're not in favor of the school safety and security pieces, let's not advocate for that on the state level. Tell me now, and we won't let ASBA know we're generally in favor of that concept.
How do you feel?
What I have concerns with, and this is with not just ASBA, but with other national organizations I've been a member of in the past, is asking members to direct their advocacy efforts is awkward, because there are things on here that we may not agree with individually underneath the general sections. Yes, I'm all for. Individual things underneath that may not be the approach that as an individual I would not approve of. As a school board, I think, yes, these general topics should be their advocacy goals, but the procedures they use to attain that,
I agree.
I don't know if I can agree with all of those, but most of them, sure. So it's an awkward thing for
They're
me to
throwing in
discuss.
things that,
That, but yes, in general, these major topics, yes, I agree with them doing those things.
And that's basically what they're asking. I'll be honest, in practical terms, I'll use the city as an example. If the city of Prescott had said, no way, we're against all 5 of these things strongly, wouldn't have mattered. There were 200 other cities in the room that said, yeah, we're
Right.
basically in favor of these. And so that's what our lobbyist organization on the Council of Cities and Towns in Arizona, went forward with. So, but if we're opposed to this, we should speak up, for sure, in that meeting. It honestly, in practical terms, they're probably moving forward.
I don't want that to be construed as I'm opposed to it.
Yeah, totally.
No.
The process,
Yeah, I agree
the process
with
is
you.
funky and flawed. I agree with you. I think this is, that they give it to us Thursday, and then they want to know by 2 weeks from now. We likely have one board meeting in between when we do. So if in general you're in favor of it, that's what we're going to want to tell our delegate. Let's say Cara's willing to go down for us in September. And then she can certainly say, when she gets there, she can say, rural and remote schools, we're in favor of that, but that third bullet point, we got an issue with that, or whatever.
So timeline, we could still do this. I hate to push things off, but we could.
I think we should.
We could not get back with them with an answer, and it won't make any difference, or we can get back to them with an answer, and it will add to their
I want to chew on it
tally.
a little
Me
more.
too.
Okay?
Yeah.
You can chew on it, but if we come back to it, when we come back to it at our next meeting, if you'd like, we're past the deadline at that point. But absolutely, you can take as much time as you want. We can just say, we didn't have enough time to look over this thoroughly. We can't give consensus approval or disapproval for this at this point. And that's fair.
When is the meeting to go down there?
It's in September that the council meets together to give group approval for this.
Whether we approve it or not. we
But
probably
according to
will
what
have
Sarah's
to
telling us,
give
along with this, they want to know in the next about a month, in the next month, how we feel about this. And if we can't get back to them by then, that's fine. We won't get back to them. They'll keep moving.
My biggest thing is I've always had a problem. I know this is not ASBA, this is ASBA's political half.
Yeah.
Actually, this is ASBA.
This is ASBA?
Yeah, this is not Friends of ASBA. Friends of ASBA does have a political.
Half?
Yes, yep.
Yeah, I guess I've always wondered why the school board part of it is the political, and it should be the other half of it that's political. Because I thought ASBA, and then they had the political outreach portion of it.
Sure.
And they were separate. So I always wondered why, but if it's in this ASBA, I just, yeah.
We can decline to respond within the time frame. No problem with that. Whatever you like.
Can we still send delegates?
I think they'll still let us have it. I'm not sure, but I think it's the case,
They
right?
still want us to send a delegate.
Participate.
Yeah, but it doesn't, I don't believe that being a delegate forces the board to
Right.
have made a decision of acceptance or rejectance of all or part of this. You're just there as a voting person.
Have you attended one of those in the past for us, Andy?
I did one
Okay.
last year, last September.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it was caught up in all the executive director issues, so I don't remember all of this part of it necessarily, but I do remember the executive director vote was critical that we had somebody there for that. And we had actually voted prior to that meeting that we supported the removal of that person, recommending the removal of that person.
Yeah, I think we did.
We voted as a board to do that.
Yeah, and our board sent a letter to that effect.
Yeah.
That's right.
So I think it was important for a delegate to be there for that vote. I can't recall this
So,
part of
so
it.
just for this item, we're obviously not gonna take a vote, but we're trying to get a consensus here, and my feeling is like, we're just not gonna answer. Is everybody okay with that?
I'm good with that.
Yeah, there's a lot of, you've had this for 4 days, but you probably also went to sleep at least once in those 4 days, brushed your teeth and did other things, so you may not have been able to go over all 50 bullet points. When I got this, I was like, whoa, I better take an hour looking over this. It looked good to me, but I'm not the person who, it's you folks. So if you'd rather, we just get back to them and say, we didn't have time to come up. I think Andy's right, we're still allowed to be in that delegate meeting. And again, in practical terms, whether we're there or not is probably immaterial.
Okay.
Are you going down there?
I would love to be one of them if my calendar is free, you know?
So that's the next
That's
piece
the
that we
problem.
ought to decide if we can, is who's likely to be able to go in September, and are you willing to attend that one
I
meeting?
would like to go. I have avoided it in all previous years, but I would like to go.
Awesome. Is that-
Anybody else want to come?
I would go to the conference. I don't
Yes,
necessarily need to
I'll
be there.
probably wind up going to it as well, but if you wanna be a delegate, I'm totally fine.
The
with that,
conference
too.
is
We
great.
can have more than,
Can we
Yeah,
have
yeah.
more?
At the conference, I
Yeah.
encourage you all to go. That's a big part of, learning a good governance
Yeah,
together.
that-
Th-
and
There are
we
some,
can.
there's some sessions that are like, just like any conference you go to, but there's some that are like, that was solid. I
Yeah.
just learned some cool
Yeah,
things.
definitely.
Yeah.
That are gonna help me be a part of the governance team of this district in a better way, for sure. So I'd encourage you all to go, but I think we're to select one delegate to
Right.
attend this meeting, so they don't have
How about,
4,000 people in the
we
room.
both look at our calendars at some future date, and one of us will go as the delegate, okay?
Do we know when? I think it's like the first.
Yeah, the first week in September, I believe,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's usually near Labor Day.
Oh, okay.
I was definitely planning on going this year, but if you're able to go.
That'd be
too,
great.
we can figure it out. Okay, good.
We'll,
Everybody will go. I will go.
I'll go.
I like it.
I thought it was that one I just signed up for.
that's
In
That's
Flagstaff.
Summer Leadership Academy in
Oh,
Flagstaff.
okay.
Yeah, they have like 3 major conventions each year.
Yeah,
It is.
yeah,
And you want to go north in summer.
Yeah. that's-
yeah. Well, I've never been to Flagstaff. Oh, yes, I have once. To
All
the
right.
ice cream place.
So let's move on to item 8D4, community comments. Share with the governing board. Anybody have anything to share? Okay, item 8D5. So these are our next meeting date is June 25th. Is a study session starting at 5 o'clock. And then then afterwards will be our 5:15 regular meeting. Baccalaureate is on Sunday the 19th at the Roof Street Theater. Senior Award Scholarship presentation is May 21st at 5:30 at the PHS Library. Senior Celebration Tour is on the 22nd from 9 to 12. Always a great time. A lot of reminiscing, right? And then the little kids love it. They dig it. You're like this 20 feet tall to them.
What, I've
Yeah.
not gone to this
Oh, you should
before.
go.
Can what do you do? Just show up at the high
Well,
school?
it starts at the district office.
Okay.
And then
Oh,
they
here,
do a
okay.
parade to all the schools. So, and there's a schedule out of when it should hit a school. So you can, for example, I go to Abaya Judd and wait till the seniors hit Abaya Judd on the buses, and they have the drums usually too, don't they?
Not for this one.
Not this year.
So it'd be
And-
good if we were at our own
Sure,
school.
or-
You could be at any of the schools you'd like, and then they finish up at the courthouse, and they do like a picture on the steps. It's kind of a neat thing, yeah.
Very
yeah.
fun.
It's neat for the kids that
Wherever
went
you'd like
through
to.
elementary school all the way up, and then,
Yeah.
and then the
Okay.
kids
It's
just,
just a-
I mean, it's
so
super awesome. And then the last day of school is May 23rd, right, Kevin?
Sounds good to me, yeah.
When?
And then the next day is graduation on Bill Shepherd Field. It'll be great weather, and the sunset will be beautiful. And that's the way it is.
7 PM.
Cool. Are we going on to chapter 10?
That's the plan. I
Okay.
think we agreed that
Oh.
we'd do at least 3 months,
Okay,
and
just
then
wanted
review
to-
and say, are we
Confirm.
Are we good to
Confirm
keep
it
doing
was,
this?
we were just going
I
in
like
order.
it. It's kind of neat. I mean, it's just.
pretty short?
And it gets
Like
your
13
juices
minutes or
flowing.
something?
but,
Yeah.
yeah. All right. Oh, we're going to a pub.
You're easily
There
entertained.
is some drinking involved in this.
All right, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I almost second that.
All right, all right, whatever, okay. Anybody opposed to this? Okay, we're adjourned.